Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump has departed Washington for Beijing for talks with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. The high-stakes meeting is expected to cover geopolitical issues, including the Iran war, as well as economic issues such as trade, tariffs, and rare earths. Iran says it has asked China to help represent its position amid escalating tensions across the Middle East. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia reportedly carried out previously undisclosed airstrikes inside Iran in late March, in retaliation for attacks on Saudi territory. Mediation talks between Samsung Electronics management and its labor union ended without a breakthrough, after marathon negotiations that lasted into the early hours of this morning. The union warned it will begin a large-scale strike on May 21st if no deal is reached. U.S. President Donald Trump has departed Washington for Beijing for talks with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. The high-stakes meeting is expected to cover geopolitical issues, including the Iran war, as well as economic issues such as trade, tariffs, and rare earths. Our Park Gun-woo starts us off.
The leaders of the world's two largest economies are set to discuss key issues during U.S. President Donald Trump's three-day visit to China. Chinese President Xi Jinping will host an official meeting with Trump on Thursday, which will be the first face-to-face talks between the leaders since they met in Busan last year. The meeting had been postponed for weeks due to the ongoing U.S.-Iran conflict. Speaking to reporters before departing Washington on Tuesday, Trump initially said he expected to have a long talk with Chinese President Xi Jinping about Iran.
Well, I think, number one, we're going to have a long talk about it. I think he's been relatively good, to be honest with you. You look at the blockade, no problems. They get a lot of their oil from that area. This is going to be a very exciting trip. A lot of good things are going to happen.
But later, Trump said Iran-related issues won't be on the agenda.
We have a lot of things to discuss. I wouldn't say Iran is one of them, to be honest with you, because we have Iran very much under control. I don't think we need any help with Iran, to be honest with you.
Beyond geopolitical tensions, trade is expected to top the agenda, with President Donald Trump seeking new business deals during the visit. American business leaders, including Tesla CEO Elon Musk and Apple CEO Tim Cook, are accompanying Trump to Beijing. The two sides are also expected to extend an existing trade truce after steep U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports and China's tighter rare earth export controls sharply escalated trade tensions earlier this year. Discussions on Taiwan and broader security issues are also expected. Attention now turns to what outcomes may emerge from Xi and Trump's crucial three-day summit. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
The Blue House says President Lee Jae-myung will hold back-to-back meetings on Wednesday with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. The talks at the Blue House are expected to cover pending bilateral issues, regional and global affairs, as well as the upcoming summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping in Beijing. Bessent and He Lifeng will also meet each other for talks in Seoul on Wednesday to coordinate key issues ahead of the summit. Tensions in the Middle East are escalating as Iran seeks diplomatic backing from China ahead of President Donald Trump's upcoming visit to Beijing. At the same time, reports of covert Saudi airstrikes inside Iran and Kuwait's arrest of suspected Iranian operatives are raising fresh concerns about a widening regional conflict. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Iranian state media says Tehran has asked China to help represent its position ahead of U.S. President Donald Trump's upcoming visit to Beijing, as tensions across the Middle East continue to rise. Iran's ambassador to China said Tehran is seeking a permanent end to the war, a stable ceasefire framework, sanctions relief, and recognition of what it calls Iran's legitimate rights. He added that China is well positioned among major global powers to deliver Iran's message. Iran is also reportedly working through mediators, including China and Pakistan, to pressure the United States toward a ceasefire, while continuing to stress its control over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said surveillance in the strategic waterway has been strengthened and vowed to defend Iran's territorial and maritime sovereignty. Meanwhile, Reuters reported Tuesday that Saudi Arabia carried out previously undisclosed airstrikes inside Iran in late March in retaliation for earlier attacks on Saudi territory. If confirmed, these strikes would mark the first known direct Saudi military action on Iranian soil. The report did not confirm which targets were hit. Separately, Kuwait says it arrested 4 men accused of belonging to Iran's Revolutionary Guard after they allegedly tried to infiltrate Kuwait's strategically important Bubiyan Island. Kuwaiti authorities said a soldier was wounded during a confrontation. Iran's foreign ministry denied the allegations and demanded the immediate release of the 4 Iranian nationals. Tehran acknowledged the sailors had entered Kuwaiti waters due to a navigation system malfunction, not for a covert military mission. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korean Defense Minister An Kyu-baek says Seoul is considering a phased contribution to efforts aimed at restoring safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. An said on Tuesday in Washington that possible support could include expressing political backing, sharing intelligence, and providing military assets. But he said no specific discussions were held regarding a larger role for South Korean troops. This follows his meeting on Monday with U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who, according to An, expressed understanding over Seoul's push for the early transfer of wartime operational control to South Korea under conditions-based requirements. President Lee Jae-myung has urged that expansionary fiscal policy be reflected in the economic planning for this year and next year. He stressed that now is the time to spend to boost the economy. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
Making more investments to prop up economic growth. That was what President Lee Jae-myung called for on Tuesday at the Cabinet/Emergency Economic Meeting as he assessed that the current conditions constitute an emergency that requires expansionary fiscal policy.
절약이 미덕일 때가 있었습니다. 안 쓰고 아끼고 저축하고 막 허리띠 졸라매고. 그러나 지금은 소비가 미덕인 시대입니다.
As he noted the economic impact of the consumption vouchers distributed last year, the president urged officials to ensure that active fiscal policy is reflected in the growth strategy plan for the latter half of the year, as well as next year's budget planning. He said critics calling for government belt-tightening were irresponsible and were turning a blind eye to people's hardships.
포퓰리즘적인 긴축재정론의 함정에 빠져서는 안 됩니다. 적극적 재정을 통해서 내수를 활성화하고 또 경제 성장률과 GDP 자체를 높이면 분모가 커져가지고 국가 부채 비율은 오히려 떨어집니다.
Lee said South Korea's net debt amounts to around 10% of its GDP, adding that its debt structure is sturdier than its global peers. He was referring to last month's IMF fiscal monitor. Economic challenges were prominent, such as addressing what the president called predatory financing, citing certain cases where low-income borrowers were being exploited by what are called bad banks. All this as tensions in the Middle East show no clear sign of ending. South Korea continues its efforts to cushion the impact on the economy, while at the same time bracing for a renewed economic order after the war. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics labor union and management failed to reach an agreement in marathon government-led mediation talks that continued into the early hours of this morning, increasing concerns over a possible general strike later this month. The negotiations at the National Labor Relations Commission in Sejong City lasted nearly 17 hours, but both sides remain divided over performance-based bonuses. The union is demanding bonuses equivalent to 15% of operating profit, along with the removal of payout caps and a formalized bonus system. The union has also warned it will begin a general strike on May 21st if no deal is reached. And now for more on the Samsung Electronics labor union's planned strike and the domestic economy, we're joined today by Dr. Kim Min-gyun, professor at Seogang Business School. Professor Kim, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me today.
So Samsung Electronics labor union has been protesting a widening pay gap with its rival SK hynix. And after the two sides failed to reach a deal last night, it says it plans to call a massive strike on May 21st. That's about a week. So could this disrupt global semiconductor supply chains or affect investment sentiment?
Of course, Samsung Electronics is play a very important role in the semiconductor industry, in basically the global industry. But indeed, when nobody wants to go for the strike, right? The government is going to go get into it, and they're trying to draw some agreement. And of course, the top management of Samsung Electronics, of course, they don't want to have some strike in this current trend. Remember, right now, the semiconductor, especially for the Samsung Electronics, including the SK hynix, well, they are doing very good in the semiconductor industry. Basically, they're trying to generate more products, and they make a huge profits. But now, because of the sharing those kinds of incentives, well, the labor union trying to go for a strike. But if they go for strike, basically, I think like we have a lot of concern that this kind of good trend will go down, and it's going to make an impact for the Korea economy as well as our semiconductor industry. So, well, I hope that it's they're gonna go for the reach to the agreement, but. Well, who knows? But no one doesn't want to go for the strike right now for the Samsung Electronics.
Right, and this comes as Korean stocks continue to rally with the Kospi now nearing 8,000. Some analysts say it could reach 12,000 by the end of the year. What's your take on these forecasts?
Well, it's kind of very optimistic forecasting, basically, for my opinion, but I think it's kind of feasible. But if you look at those kind of Kospi trend for current year, well, I think those kind of over more than 12,000, well, I think it's reachable goal. But if you look at the main players, like as we mentioned about the Samsung Electronics, well, the semiconductor industry, including the SK hynix, well, they are the one who trying to boost up those kind of Kospi, well, because they have generated so much profits as well as the revenue. Therefore, well, I think, well, those kind of forecasting or prediction is kind of a good sign for our Korean economy. But as you look at those kind of current situation like the war in Iran and US, and we concern about those kind of price for the oil, and we talk about those kind of union strike for the Samsung Electronics. But even though there are many various events that we are facing with, but I think we kind of in the stance for the optimistic in our Kospi and of course that our Korea economy based on those kind of semiconductors, like a nice forecasting for the future.
Right, and the Korean government appears to be pretty determined to fight inflation, with the Blue House saying this week it's entering what they call war on rising prices. So what do you make of the government's response so far, and how serious exactly is the current economic situation here in South Korea?
Well, their stance on they're trying to expand their fiscal policy, but one of the concerns that I have is, of course, the price of the oil. But I feel the war between the Iran and US is going to go for the more for the long term, like the war between the Russia and Ukraine. Well, I think it's going to make a huge impact especially for the inflation rate. But if you look at the oil price, but before the war, the oil price was kind of like $65, but now it's over $100. Well, if you look at all those kind of naphtha and all the chemicals and all the materials, and of course, the Korea has a lot of dependence on importing the oil from the Middle East. But if oil price is going up, of course, it's going to make an impact for the whole economy, especially for the price, and it's going to make an impact on the inflation. So if inflation is going to get higher, and of course, with the buying powers, all the economy is kind of get the pressures for those kind of issues, then it's going to slow down our growth for our economic situation. So, of course, the government is trying to intervene and they're trying to control those kind of inflation. But right now, the basic solution, of course, the war has to be end in the Middle East.
Right, and analysts say this current economic situation is making it very difficult for the Bank of Korea to move toward rate cuts. And some even say the bank could even raise key interest rates in the second half of the year. What are your thoughts on the central bank's policy direction going forward?
Well, now they're just looking at our economic situation, but they're kind of in the conflict situation. Well, inflation is they're gonna get the pressure for the inflation, of course, so that they trying to have some prediction for increasing their interest rate. But if we're going to increase our interest rate, of course, then we talk about the debt from the household. We have a lot of issues for like a house, the real estate and other issues, of course. So, well, they have to be very careful on increasing those kind of interest rate, even though we already recognize those kind of like the oil price is going up, inflation rate. So I think they're trying to considering the watching those kind of economic situation, and maybe the next quarter or maybe at the end of the year, maybe they have some forward step to increase their interest rate. But right now, they have to wait and see how this is economy going, corresponding to the oil price.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And Korea's largest broadcasting and media exhibition, KOBA 2026, kicked off here in Seoul, highlighting how AI is reshaping the future of content production and media technology. Our culture correspondent Cho Young-in was there. The 34th Korea International Broadcasting, Media, Audio, and Lighting Show, or KOBA 2026, opened in Seoul on Tuesday under the theme AI-powered media era, where content connects, creation evolves, and convergence begins. Jointly organized by Korea ENX and the Korea Broadcast Engineers and Technicians Association, this year's exhibition features more than 220 companies and around 1,000 booths from Korea and abroad. Organizers expect attendance to exceed last year's figure, with more than 40,000 visitors projected during the four-day event.
We see KOBA evolving in step with the growth of Korea's broadcasting industry. The exhibition features AI-powered content and a range of converging technologies. Visitors can also explore various content solutions and products utilizing cloud services and business platforms.
The exhibition spans the entire broadcasting, media, audio, and lighting industries, showcasing the latest technologies including 4K and 8K broadcasting systems, AI solutions, and digital content platforms. The event is sponsored by government agencies including the Ministry of Science and ICT, along with major Korean broadcasters such as Arirang TV.
Arirang TV is showcasing practical AI technologies that can be used immediately in the field without requiring costly infrastructure. AI can control switchers through voice commands, while lightweight NDI-based IP technology enables seamless connections between headquarters and remote production sites.
KOBA 2026 aims to move beyond a conventional trade show by offering a more immersive, experience-oriented content platform.
Our offerings include projectors, Lumix cameras, and system equipment. Panasonic is striving to go beyond being simply a broadcasting equipment manufacturer and becoming a company that can offer customers a complete ecosystem and provide integrated solutions.
Having evolved alongside rapid technological shifts, from the rise of one-person media to today's VFX, XR, and OTT-driven landscape, KOBA has continued to grow into one of Korea's leading media industry platforms throughout the 2020s. The exhibition is attracting industry leaders as a place to showcase the latest broadcasting and media technologies and explore new global business opportunities. KOBA 2026 will continue through Friday. Cho Young-in, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-han, and this is The World Now. A French woman infected in the cruise ship hantavirus outbreak is now fighting for her life on an artificial lung as the total number of reported cases from the MV Hondias reached 11 on Tuesday, with 9 cases confirmed. Doctors in Paris say the French patient is on life support and her blood is being pumped through an artificial lung to relieve pressure on her failing heart and lungs. 3 people have died since the outbreak began. The WHO Director General said all cases so far are linked to the ship and there is no sign of a wider outbreak, but warned the virus's long incubation period of up to 8 weeks means more cases could still emerge. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Makary resigned on Tuesday, leaving America without a permanent head of its top drug and food regulator. His resignation came after weeks of clashes with White House officials, conservative media, and anti-abortion groups over a series of controversial decisions. The breaking point was flavored vapes. Trump had personally rebuked Makary earlier this month for not moving fast enough to approve fruit-flavored e-cigarette products, a campaign promise Trump had made in 2024. The FDA approved them days after the rebuke. A source close to Makary said he resigned rather than sign off on something he did not believe in. Trump said Makary was a, quote, terrific guy, but was having some difficulty. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer refused to resign on Tuesday, despite one of Labour's worst local election defeats and more than 80 of its own lawmakers publicly demanding he set a timetable to leave. 4 junior ministers resigned on Tuesday. Starmer acknowledged the past 48 hours has been destabilizing and that political instability carries a real economic cost as UK borrowing costs hit their highest level in nearly 30 years. He insisted no formal leadership challenge had been triggered and that the country expected him to govern. Health Minister Wes Streeting, seen as one of Starmer's main challengers, is due to meet Starmer on Wednesday morning. The 79th annual Cannes Film Festival opened Tuesday with New Zealand filmmaker Peter Jackson receiving an honorary Palme d'Or and actress Jane Fonda declared the festival open. Some of jury members used their platform to speak bluntly about war and politics. Park Chan-wook, the South Korean director of Old Boy, said art and politics go hand in hand. And Scottish screenwriter Paul Laverty claimed that Hollywood had blacklisted actors who opposed the war in Gaza. The festival runs through May 23rd, when the Palme d'Or winner will be announced.
It was a foggy start for many inland regions this morning, but once the fog clears, temperatures will rise rapidly under strong sunshine. And by this afternoon, highs will climb well above season norms. Then we will be dealing with summer heat starting tomorrow. And with clear skies and strong sunshine dominating this afternoon, UV levels will be very high nationwide. And intense sunlight will boost ozone levels as well. So even if the air feels nice, sunscreen, hats, and plenty of water will definitely come in handy today. Afternoon highs will be 2 to 4 degrees Celsius higher than yesterday, getting up to 26 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Chuncheon, Gyeongju, Gwangju will make it to 27 degrees, but Daegu and Daejeon will be hotter at 20 degrees Celsius, and air quality will be decent nationwide. Then we'll be skipping a month ahead through early next week with temperatures climbing again and humidity gradually lowering. The risk of wildfires will increase, so fire caution is a must when outdoors.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.